Mike,
I was
taking
planning
care
to.
of business. So, every day, taking care of business every way. Anyway, are you too young for that song? Like,
No, it was in The Knight's Tale.
oh, geez. That's not, I mean, yay, but thank you. So, uh,
A lot of songs I know do come from movies, so
yeah, right. Speaking of things that are going to make me feel old, so we're talking about an ancient movie today. Really, really old, really great. Fifth Element.
It's not that old.
So I got to introduce it, right? Because I'm on the defense today. Is that what we decided?
I kind of think so.
Nobody could remember who submitted this movie as the perfect movie because we all agree that it's a perfect movie.
I mean,
so
it's a
I
good
decided
movie.
to throw myself on that fire.
But
it's perfect. By the criteria that we established when we came up with this, like when we were suggested this, can you tell me anything in the movie that you would change?
They could have had better costumes for their aliens.
No, come on. What's wrong with the costumes? That's what you're going to start with.
So pathetic of these guardian aliens that can't walk more than like 10 feet a minute.
Yeah, judge me by like, my size, do you?
There's no. I judge you by your fucking ability to get out of a room when the door is going like. You can run. Oh my god, just fucking run.
Director, where's the body? Where'd the body go? If the door's been sealed for 300 years, where did the body go? Because they beamed it up or something. I don't know. Like, don't worry about it. So, they're perfect.
A lot of the things in this movie, which I also think is why it maybe not be a perfect movie, there are things where you have to kind of think, don't worry about it.
Okay, so other than the body, which I will admit was like one of the main things that always kind of pulled me out, like what else? What else do you got that's don't worry about it?
Something I was wondering, which maybe I just missed the explanation on, is why. Okay, so Lilo, the fifth element, is the perfect being, but she seemed to be one of the aliens, and then when they reconstruct her from the DNA, she's human.
Yes,
but so she wasn't one of the guardian aliens that couldn't move.
Did you ever see what the alien looked like inside the suit? Did you notice that when they reconstructed her, that they literally grafted the bone onto the hand that was in the glove? So how do you know they don't look like people underneath?
Then why would they design a suit they can't move in?
The proportion, the head and stuff makes no sense to human proportions.
I'll let Cody speak for me.
Yeah, it's called an ambush, kids. A properly executed ambush leaves no survivors. Everybody knows that.
I mean, these guys seem like the custodians of the most important. This thing is going to destroy all life. So they are protecting the weapon again, and they seem completely incompetent in what they're doing.
Except that they win, right? It all works out in the end.
Well, I'm not sure that's much thanks to this alien race, other than them holding the ball for 5,000 years, I guess.
300. See, you guys can't even
properly
you're using hyperbole.
The guardian aliens were 5,000 years. Every 5,000 years.
Sure.
But then it was the
priesthood
in the that had Bilbo. That was 300.
Well, yeah, but the aliens only came to steal the stones 300 years ago from the movie's perspective, whatever. But, yeah.
And why weren't they holding them the whole time instead of leaving them in Egypt?
Why was it no longer safe on Earth? Because humans were getting too smart and they were going to find them? And that was
why
bad?
Leave it there in the first place? Why leave it the hieroglyphs if they were just going to show up and here's the stuff that you need to do?
Because apparently the evil forms in our solar system or close to our solar system is coming to our Earth. Yeah, there's not a lot of backstory. I'll give you that. I'd love to know more about the universe as always.
A weird, they over-explained in a very dumb way of how they were reconstructing the thing because of DNA and then became Lilu. But then they didn't explain enough of what the hell the Guardian aliens were doing, or why this happened, how this has been perpetuated. Is this happening again in another 5,000 years? There's just a lot of not explained. And then I got annoyed when that dumb doctor was like, but look at the DNA strands and look how much that is. This is the perfect being, just something or other, because it was engineered. It's like, you could have done that bit a bit better so that it wasn't scientific garbage and it was instead just, we don't know, but this is cool. Instead of like, I know this and this is a wonderful engineered thing and look how pretty it is, when that's not how DNA strands work.
It's Clarke's third law. Like the whole thing about the Mondoshuans is that it's Clarke's third law, right? Because it's sufficiently advanced technology that is indistinguishable from magic, literally, right? The whole thing. Like, the guy is advanced enough to recognize that this DNA is so complicated it could not have possibly evolved in his worldview, right? So it must have been engineered, right? But the stones are so advanced in whatever their technology is that, it's basically magic for all intents and purposes as far as the movie's concerned.
Sure, yeah. So magic stones and aliens are fine to mix, but the garbled description of what DNA is it annoyed me this time.
Okay. Like, I don't know what to tell you. Like, you're okay with the magic, you're okay with the aliens, but they got their peanut butter and their chocolate, and that made you mad.
Yes. Okay. Like, so assert that something's magic and leave it there. That's fine to me. Assert, like, because the DNA has extra strands and it's the double, it's the helix, but it's got like 36 of them. Like, it kept bringing up a quote, remember, from House, like, if your DNA is 2% off, you're a fucking dolphin. Like, that's like, you don't become that. And then, like, it annoyed me enough that I was like, that the rest of that sequence of making the girl again was annoying because it didn't make sense. It had tried to make sense, it failed, and then it made the rest of it break immersion for me this time. How did magic stones is fine. They just leave at magic stones, and it's good.
So how did it fail? Is it because you didn't like it, or because you didn't understand it, or something else?
It was the word salad of things that are important and scientific. Of like,
you mean DNA. Jargon and like science fiction? Like, it's the classic thing. Like, you're going to tell me you're going to go watch Back to the Future, and all the information about the flux capacitor and the intermix ratio from the warp core and all that shit's going to make sense. Like, that's classic. Like, you're not a huge fan of Trek, I'm guessing, right?
I'm not that much, but to a certain extent, a warp core doesn't exist, so it's just it's magic by another name. But DNA does exist. I remember having to learn about that in cell biology and all of that. So when they're doing that...
What about slightly greasy subatomic particles?
Yeah, what the fuck is greasy particles?
Right? So, don't you want to know?
There was a lot of cool world building that I enjoyed. And there was a lot of cool... I feel like that's also one of my criticisms. Why I love this movie, and I've watched it a lot of times. But one of I think there's also some pacing issues. It's kind of but that's also a movie of the time, right? They're like doing bigger things was not as common. Trilogies stuff was not as big as it is now. Because I feel like it could have had a lot more room to breathe and expand upon.
Well, and I mean, they talk about that in the trivia. He apparently had envisioned it as a trilogy, but honestly, I feel like the pacing is decently good, right? Like, where are you going to get enough action and additional world building or whatever else to carry 2 additional movies out of what we saw, right? Like, there'd be a lot of unnecessary drama. So I don't necessarily think it would have been better by having 2 additional movies as much as I want them, as much as I'd like to see a sequel or whatever, but like, that's kind of the problem. And I mean, I don't know. Like, I mean, you're not necessarily wrong, right? But it's literally Hollywood technobabble, right? So you didn't like the technobabble, but that doesn't mean that it didn't make a measure of sense, right? And again, it's sufficiently advanced technology is kind of what they're demonstrating. They rebuilt an entire person from a single cell in like 35 seconds. But you're mad because of the explanation he gave while it was going on, right? Like, I don't know how to answer to that, right? Like,
Right. Yeah. But
So-
the explanation graded. And then for the rest of that sequence, I was just like, that doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense. And because it broke the I'm here for the ride. And
The
now I'm like,
suspension of disbelief is the word you're looking for.
I
You realized
sort
that
of-
you were on a ride and in a movie instead of just being along for the ride, and in which case, you
I guess it's not like I'm not aware I'm watching a movie when I'm watching a movie. It's just I don't know if that's the right thing to go with the suspension of disbelief, but it's just like it pulled me out, and then it made the surrounding couple of minutes annoying and not nearly as fun because it kept. Okay, so if they have to blast the thing with UV radiation for it to develop skin, how in the fuck did she grow hair? She had months worth of hair, but not body hair, which I mean,
Yes.
a perfect being wouldn't
I
have
was
body
thinking
hair.
that
I do
too,
agree
like-
with that. So, I mean,
no
that-
armpit
that's
hair
not-
because she's like 13 seconds old. But yeah,
I mean,
orange
she
hair.
shouldn't have body hair because a perfect being wouldn't, and that's fine with
Well,
me.
that's your definition. But remember, the director is French, so that's not necessarily his
Oh, so-
idea of a perfect being.
Should have left the armpit. Okay, right.
It
But then she
really
had
kind of
months
depends.
of growth of hair that had been dyed blonde and then dyed orange. So not only did she have hair that shouldn't be there, it also showed the.
Are
two
you
different
telling
dye
me that in
jobs.
her 200 million memo groups that she didn't carry the gene for fluorescent orange hair?
But then it would have been
That
orange
broke your
throughout the whole
suspension
way.
of disbelief?
It would have just been orange.
Why,
like,
though?
Because
Because that
have
follows
shown
human
dye.
genome standards. She's
Did
an
your hair
alien, though.
change color
right?
halfway through its strand?
I don't have 200 million DNA memo groups. Also, I've got salt and pepper coming in because I'm old. So
I only have
kind
one
of.
white hair. I'm kind of it's
Yeah.
it's adorable.
It's begun. That's just
I've only got one.
that's the vanguard. You've got to catch him and kill him early because
No,
he's the
it's
harbinger
cute.
of your doom.
I like silver hair. I'm just waiting for it to
I
grow
have-
more.
I have yet to find
I
one.
mean, it's
Knock
a
on wood.
slow encroach
Your hair's
over the
too
next
short.
20 years, I imagine, and then I mean, it depends how Asian are you again? Because you might be like in your 80s before it really
30%.
goes. But yeah,
So my dad
yeah.
is the half Japanese one. He only had a few until he got into his mid 40s, but then like at the age of 45, he had another baby and he got married.
yeah,
Oh,
So-
but the
and that's-
stress.
Yeah, and so like, that's the year where people are able to actually predict what age he was instead of thinking he was still in his 20s. And
Right.
it's, the white hair just kind of blossomed from there. But I only I've got one, but I was wondering if I could pull off like the Tulsi Gabbard look. It was cool.
yeah. All right, so I don't want to get bogged down into this because yes, it's made up and it's science and whatever. So like that's one thing. Okay, so like what else did you not like? What else pulled you out of the movie? Because for me, so like to finish a thought that I had earlier, right? The stuff that breaks me out of the immersion, right, is when they break their own rules, right? So like for example, last night instead of watching this movie, we were watching Order of the Phoenix, right? Because we've been on a Harry Potter kick again this week. So when they come through and say like wands are necessary for all magic and they should always have an incantation, and then as badass as the scene is, you've got Sirius Black and Harry Potter literally gunslinging, dueling spells, but there's not nearly enough shouting at each other in any kind of incantations and that sort of thing. They're literally just flinging wands back and
Yeah,
forth.
but they
right?
don't
It's
They don't need to say it.
It depends on what the rules are established on screen because it's a movie, right? So I'm just saying, like little details like that. And again, this is one of my favorite scenes of the movie, so it's not really a criticism. It's just the example that came to mind because we just watched it, right? But it's the same thing with like the Marvel movies or Star Wars or anything else like that. You want to hear me go on for 2 hours about how terrible Star Wars is? Establish in the canon that you can't go to hyperspace in a gravity well and then use that hyperspace engine to jump into a planet's gravity well. Like that's the shit that pisses me off, right? But the fact that they came up with jargon and you were like, wait a minute, in 1997, they didn't even have a full mapping of the human genome, but they just said a bunch of science
give
words.
Movies a little bit of leeway when they use quantum when they shouldn't. Especially if it's from before times, but I don't know.
The before times, the dark ages of 1997,
Yeah.
where we were cloning dinosaurs and had just
you
mastered
were
the
the one
art of
calling it old in
CGI.
the beginning.
It's like 24 years old. That's pretty old.
But yeah, I think like you said, like both Alex brought up there for the tendon here with Harry Potter is that it is explained in the books. It's not explained on screen. like Justin
Right.
says. But there
I
is a
don't
lot
remember
of
the movies
shit
as much.
So
in these
part
movies
of the
that are
reason,
not explained
yeah,
on screen.
sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. Part of the reason why I bring that up because one of the biggest controversies, for lack of a better word, and because I'm getting a soundbite out here, in Harry Potter is when they go to Hogsmeade and the dude is stirring his tea with his fucking finger and that spoon, and he doesn't have a wand. He's doing wandless magic. Oh my god, the fans won't shut up about this, and it's been like 20 years, right? So that's why I'm poking the bear, because I'll get the Harry Potter nerds mad about something. But that's what I'm saying, right? Like, if you establish the rules and then you break the rules, that breaks me out of immersion. But the fact that the guy comes out and he was talking about the intermix ratio on the quantum warp drive, and how slightly greasy subatomic particles, like you 10 years ago, whatever, I was like, what the hell is a greasy subatomic particle? We don't know, because it's sufficiently advanced technology. That's the answer. Any better than nanites in Star Trek and a bunch of other stuff that are quasi science to make you kind of hook in and yet be something too advanced.
The fault of it is, if they're just going to make a new thing and establish it and here's the rules, okay. But when they were trying to talk about real world DNA, that is where they fail, because you can't just make this magical thing while also trying to harken back to anything grounded. They shouldn't have tried to ground it.
Why though?
Because the rest of the movie none of the rest of it is grounded in that way.
Okay.
So they shouldn't have had one attempt at making but here's the real world stuff. Just say that, more magic words instead of trying to go back to real DNA.
I kind of disagree with that anyways, though, right? Like, they don't necessarily go into as technical as specifics. P.S. This guy is like, a doctor at an institute, and this is his jam, right? So the fact that he wouldn't nerd out about it would be weird. And you don't necessarily get people tell you like the number of grams of uranium in those fuel cells that they're transferring or whatever, but like you get little tastes of their technology the whole time. And and to get us into something productive and my side of things, right? In my opinion, there isn't a scene or a line in the movie that is wasted. Right? Like, every single thing either sets up something else or immediately pays off, or in a few cases, like, pays off as a joke towards the end of the movie or a scene, right? But I'm talking down to like the number of matches in the matchbox, right? Or the fact that like one of the scenes that I was going to say, like, if one of you guys brought up, I'm just going to give it to you. If one of you guys brought up is like, why is this scene in the movie, was like the parasites, right? We didn't necessarily need a 5-minute sequence of them torching these parasites and seeing them swap out the fuel cells. You just needed to know that parasites were a thing so that when Cornelius gets caught, because the ship recognizes him as a parasite, like, that would have been enough of a payoff, right? But it's that kind of thing. Like, all of that ties into either the world building or the story, or
that part's fine. That part's enjoyable, because like it's the same thing of when the attendant when they're trying to check onto the plane, and she says, "Sorry about the garbage." What are you talking about? The garbage, the giant pile of garbage that's behind you.
Yes,
like, that was just
that's
set dressing.
Practically just. But it's also just a gag to get him to look behind him to see Corbin coming.
Sure, like... but there's also just like the immersion of the attendant saying something about like, sorry about the garbage, and then like, oh yeah, because they're in like this weird, crazy, stinking pile of garbage airport.
It's because the aliens are on strike. So
probably
you'll find that out from the trivia.
Whatever.
No,
and all that's more of the world building, the setting, the atmosphere. That's fine, and keep it as absurd and ridiculous as that.
But when it's absurd science, it's too far.
When it tries to explain it, I don't think it worked. I don't think they should have tried to either explain nothing or explain it better. Don't explain.
So what's a better explanation, director? As a writer, I want you to come up with a better explanation.
We don't know what this is, but we think we can rebuild it, and let's see.
But he does. He invented the technology.
So they can rebuild it.
You're just 200 years too early to understand it, is my argument.
If they have the ability to rebuild something, cool, let's just rebuild it and see what's happened, and it's going to be in the super safe thing that she can't break out. Right. And they establish it, and then she breaks out, of course. Whatever.
Right.
That part's fine. That's a gag. That's great. But if they
it's also to show her power level,
what's going to happen, instead of we've already analyzed every single iota of its quantum DNA. Don't do that part. Just say we're going to see, and not that we've already figured out what it is.
Could it be just like more of their arrogance, right? Where similar to the Admiral in the first scene, well, second or third scene, that he thinks that he's so smart that he's just going to blow up this evil planet, that we can put that up as ridiculous. It couldn't be the same thing with the scientist, where he's just so smart that it's like, well, I mean, we're really good at human DNA, and we know that the alien DNA is this, so we know that we can rebuild it, and then get surprised because, he's arrogant and he doesn't know everything.
I think it could have been a kind of a tense what's going to happen of all basic, almost very much the same thing of like, look, it's rebuilding a person, and this is interesting, without the jarring moment of DNA not working like DNA.
Okay. I'm not a geneticist, so I didn't get that far into it, I guess. But I mean, is there a way we can move the conversation? It's been 20 minutes practically on this one scene. So we got this one scene. Can we extract this one scene and say, was the rest of the movie perfect, or do you have other examples that you hated? Like,
this is one of those movies. I understand why you love it. It's very comfortable. It's enjoyable. I do enjoy the movie. It's not perfect.
But why? You can't just say like it's just not perfect. It doesn't have to bring you joy, right? That's where I was kind of priming the pump a little bit when we started again, right? The criteria was, what would you change in the movie to make it better? Because if you can't come up with like what is Leonardo DiCaprio? Is he a better primary? Is Jean Reno, is he a better primary? Because he was considered, because him and Luke Besson and Gary Oldman, right? They did The Professional. So like, where would these have been better casting choices? Who would have been better than Mia Jovovich at the time? Like that sort of thing, right? Like we can quibble about the pseudoscience, but I feel like that's a zero-sum game where like none of us are going to win, because it apparently hits differently, right? It depends on your tolerance for technical jargon and bullshit. Like all rules are made up, right? So it just depends on like how you can accept it. But like in the scope of the movie, was there a scene that was just so violently shaky that you couldn't get into it, or was there something wrong with the world building or the set dressing or the casting, or like that's kind of what I'm saying. Like it doesn't have to be the best movie. It doesn't have to be your number one top pick, because there's only going to be one of those at the end of the day, right? There's only ever going to be one number one movie. So, we could go back through all of your perfect submissions and be like, okay, which ones beat out The Mummy? Is The Mummy truly the only perfect movie for you?
Probably.
Or Chinatown? Is Chinatown your perfect movie? Because you can only pick one director. The other ones don't make you nearly as happy. That's not what we're talking about, though. We're talking about, is it perfect? Could you change anything to improve the movie? I guess outside of this one scene. So, right?
It is hard to say what I think should have been changed, but there's just something it did kind of feel like it was missing watching it this time.
Okay. A 20 years more advanced understanding of genetics could have helped. I think we can acquiesce that. Science marches on. But I mean, shit, they barely like cloned Dolly the sheep at the time, right? So yeah, that was the new hotness, cloning.
I mean, generally for me, it's like I would say it's like a 8 out of 10 movie for me, probably. For to like give it like a number on a scale. I think I don't like Chris Tucker's character, and I don't like.
I loved him. No, he's the best part of the movie.
I don't like it. I think I can see the character work, but
Chris Tucker's too much. Part of the whole movie.
I mean that's
So from the hours between 5 and 7, you're going to give yourself a hand, Green. Super Green. So, but just his whole thing, like the bomb scene is one of my other favorites, because it's like, what's this thing with all these numbers? And he's like, well, it couldn't be a bomb because all these hotels have bomb detectors, and he's so smart because he's so right in that moment, except that he's wrong. So he's like, see, I'm right, aren't I? And then womp. It just, again, a lot of stuff I think is played for a gag, right? So you definitely get things like Corbin's mother, again, would almost be entirely wasted if they didn't set her up as being like the terrible nagging mother early on. And then it pays off with the president at the end of the movie. Right. It's like, wait a minute, you couldn't
He doesn't even sound like the president.
He's an
not
idiot.
smart, and
You
he's
don't
not
sound
smart.
like an idiot. So yeah.
Ruby Road was the best part of the whole movie. He was the part I was excited to get to rewatch because that was enjoyable.
Well, and his whole, like, as a sidekick, for lack of a better word, during the entire fight scene, right? Where it's like, just hold the gun on him, and it's like, this doesn't feel right, my man. And then he accidentally shoots him, and he's like,
do you think he'll be okay?
You think he'll be okay? You know, like, just, you know.
I liked the president's like, we need this has to be I want this to be subtle. I want it to be under the radar. Yeah, let's just get him into this competition and have Ruby Rod run next to him.
Right.
The general who thought that one up.
Yeah, with a live mic the entire time. And then the negotiation, which is, like, to me, one of the quintessential scenes of the movie. I'm sorry, I'm going to say it. Where it's like, he does the count, he shoots half of them in one go. And then, you know, like, then even cutting across that, because you've got Fogg. I can't remember the actor's name just now, but you've got Fogg as the character. And where did you learn to negotiate like that? And the president's like, I wonder, you know, because he's got all the pieces, right? Like, everybody at home is listening to all this shit. They'd be like, oh, I don't know, maybe he is a government agent, maybe he is just, you know, whatever. But the president's like, that motherfucker. So
I can't also, that general who recruits him, who gets frozen to death, who's then alive again.
Fine.
I guess that's just because, you know, they have this they can make people regen from a couple of DNA cells, so I guess that's fine.
He was in cryogenic freeze, and they put him in the reactor, I'm sure. So
yeah, it didn't make that's a small thing, but I thought about it at the time when I watched it. It was like, why is his what seems to be his fridge, when he looks in it earlier, a freezer? That didn't make any sense to me. That's just like a completely random thing.
Right.
I love generally, I really love this movie. I think pacing wise for me, and world building wise, if this had been 2 movies or something, I would have loved that. I would have liked to see a little more character development. It's a little, you know, because they want because apparently he envisioned the trilogy, right? And he gets 1 movie. Right. So it's very fast paced to the point of where it's a little too breakneck speedy. It's a little, there's not enough time for the characters to develop as much, I feel like, which he still gets a lot done on screen, don't get me wrong on that. I think that's pretty good. Maybe except the Ruby character, I could have done maybe with another actor. I could have liked it more. I found him a little annoying.
So who would have been a better pick, though?
I'm not sure. I feel like it's just Chris Tucker, right? He overacts.
No. So let me offer a little bit, right? So according to the trivia, the character was meant to be a mix between Prince and Michael Jackson, and they actually approached both of them to run that part. So do you think either of them would have done a better job?
I don't know if I've seen them act, so I don't know.
Well, Prince had his own movie.
Watch the Michael Jackson movie where he turns into a robot in a car and, like, flies off into space or whatever?
I'm sorry, what are you talking about?
No, I have not seen that movie.
So back in the day, shortly after color was invented, there's a Michael Jackson movie. You guys have never seen that? Of course you haven't. I want to put this on our list just because. Like, what was the other topic we were going to do where it was like terrible movies that we should inflict on people, and I was talking about the stuff. We're inflicting the Michael Jackson movie on everybody. So
but we needed a name. We didn't have a name. We need a catchy something or other. I don't know. Just because kind of works.
This is it. Moonwalker? Was that the name of it?
Would make sense.
Yes. The name is Moonwalker, 1988. I'm sorry, I haven't seen this since I was a child, so like I didn't know any of this other than he turns into a robot for some reason. And you can see that in the trailer, so it doesn't count as a spoiler. But
trailers are spoilers.
It's so terrible. Joe Pesci is in it. Come on. How bad could it be?
If Pesci's in it, then it has to be good because goddamn, I love Pesci.
So Cody and friends, if you guys have an idea of what we can call a segment where we inflict terrible movies on each other that doesn't use so many words, we're game. We want to play this game. So
we are crowdsourcing podcast names, I guess.
Why not?
No, Tucker, I think, did that better than either Prince or I probably have never seen Michael Jackson act, so I shouldn't besmirch him. But the over-the-top exuberance with the gayness and his voice work, I thought that was great. He's the best part. I enjoyed him so much.
That's fair. I mean, for me, I've never I kind of like the Rush Hour movies, but it's not because of Chris Tucker.
Those are movies I have not seen in a very long time.
I just don't like. He's just. I don't like him. Not as a person. I just don't like his acting. It's too much. Almost always.
That's the point of him.
I get that the point, but it's too much even for too much. It's just too much.
No, it's like
he's an influencer before they had a name for it, my dude. So that's literally what he is. So he shows up. He's way too important for everybody. He can make or break your career in a single word, or get your pants off, apparently, because of the future. But yeah, just I mean, the
hero is obviously fantastic. He does a great job. He fits. It was like unless they changed the role, I guess, to fit Bruce Willis more, it was like a perfect Bruce Willis role. The villain. I mean, Gary is great no matter what he does, even when he plays the most ridiculous looking villain.
You can improve the movie by having more of him.
Having more Zorg? Is that
more Gary Oldman doing ridiculous shit.
Well, and I mean, that's the thing. It's like, so because, again, kid, when this came out, like, this was one of the movies that made me realize that Gary Oldman's a chameleon, right? Where it was like, wait a minute, he was Sirius Black? He's Zorg? He's the fucking murderer from Leon the Professional? He's like all of these roles, right? But he
was the crazy Russian dude on Air Force One?
Right. Like, they're at least, that's like they don't do very much to change his face or anything, right? Whereas like the other ones, like Sirius, he's got a mustache, and Zorg, he's got that plate on his head and the emo haircut and whatever. But he's Gary Oldman and he's freaking fantastic. Like, I mean, I can't complain about that.
It's a little unrealistic to me that a man presented as that powerful on Earth has that incompetent hirelings. I mean, hirelings can be come on, and like he has to go do it himself. And I think that kind of irked me is when he shoots up into the ceiling on Leela, and she appears to be hurt, like she got hit by the bullets, at least a little, even though you can't really see. Like she appears hurt. It's shown that this gun can, like, once it hit once, it will just sneak this target that is a hit. But wouldn't she have just been like Swiss cheese then?
So, as we all know, the hero survives if the plot requires it, right? So that's what I can tell you. We could go into a quasi-scientific explanation that does not appear whatsoever on the screen, would be my own headcanon, but yeah, I can understand having a problem with that. The fact that he's literally got a missile on the end of it and he doesn't just blow her up, or a dozen other things, right? The fact that he throws a fit about needing all 4 of the stones, even though very clearly if he had one single stone would be sufficient, So, these little details. But
another thing, speaking of the 4 stones that I didn't think about before that I thought about this time, was like, so even if we pretend that this alien's physiology is very different, and her lungs or something is in that big tentacle on her head, so there's basically a lot of room in here, it still seems like those 4 stones wouldn't fit in the body cavity.
They're triangular. They nest. Like,
they're fairly large.
So what's crazy about that, though, and I'm working this in because this is how I watch movies with the wife now, is that you guys remember another 90s movie that came out around the same time, Men in Black. In Men in Black, Will Smith gave birth to a little squid baby. Then she grew up to be that singer, the opera singer. Does that make you feel old yet? Just saying.
I don't remember a squid baby. Oh
my God. You're hopeless.
I remember.
Yeah, sorry. Sorry. It was a long time ago. It's been a long time since I've seen the movie.
About 24 years since you were like a tiny baby when it came out, but yeah.
I would have been
not to mention it's actually a real tragedy when they decided to shoot her, because after her big operatic scene, she was going to move on to her second track, which is "I'm Blue, Dabba Dee Dabba Die." So, yeah. So this is why I'm homeless now, because the wife kicked me out after that joke. But
oh shit, dude. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So because Cody keeps harassing me about it in the chat, he knows that I'm reading, and he has to know. He's throwing a big fit about how the hero and the villain never meet, despite the fact that they were within 10 feet of each other one time during the movie. But does that bother anybody else? Because I don't see why it matters.
I don't think the hero and the villain has to meet. Like, and really, the real villain is this extraterrestrial, otherworldly, planet of doom, Cthulhu, whatever being.
Zorg is just the front man of the villain.
We've got the scariest shape we could possibly imagine: a sphere. Like, if you want to critique stuff, like, that's the stuff that it's like, it's an evil planet. Woo,
well, I mean, so if I overthink or even think for more than like a couple seconds on the whole thing of what Lilu is and the 5,000 years, like, so she's getting on the internet, and it's adorable that the computers still look like those giant CRT.
Right.
But I'll try to give 90s movies some leeway on that. But so she's learning about all of the history that's happened in 5,000 years, and she's horrified that there's war.
Right.
One would think some of all those other words would have referenced war before that.
Probably. Like conflict. That's a good battle.
And she's
assault.
Kind of like a super fighter, and she has no issue just fighting, and so war.
But she learned kung fu from watching the encyclopedia, so. And that probably explains why the Mangalores kicked their ass at the moon, because they don't believe in warfare for some reason. I don't know. Yeah, because it's clearly, like, they always refer to it as a weapon. Like, why are you calling it a weapon if you're not going to use this super weapon as a reverse Death Star laser to blow up the evil planet?
Yeah, so that is a bit simplistic, which could maybe been better. But there's also so she's been asleep for 5,000 years, and then she's awake for 48 hours, and she's going to go back to sleep for 5,000 years.
Yeah.
Is that what happens? Is that her lifespan? She only has like 2 or 3 days in the course of 5,000 years. So after they're done fucking in the tube, that she's going to go back to sleep.
That is a life well lived, if you ask me. So I don't know, but it's funny you say that, though, because it reminds me of a quip that I made at the wife, which was like Corbin Dallas's whole thing where he's looking for her after the battle at the hotel, and it's like, is Lilu in trouble? It's like, when is Lilu not in trouble? It's like, look, father, I have known this girl for 24 hours, and she's been in trouble every single one of them. Of course she's in trouble. Like, she woke up and immediately ran from the government, fell through a cab, got shot up by the police. Like, that was just her first hour. Like, she got a couple of naps in there somewhere, so it's not quite as bad as Dresden. But, yes, I don't know. That does seem to be the implication. Honestly, the Mondoshawians, like, I can't break the fact that they're old school biblical angels, in the sense where it's like, look at their rounded shape with all their little, maybe their sensors on. So it's like, maybe it would have been better if the Mondoshawians had shown up and the first words had been, "Be not afraid," and then you guys would have like twigged to it or something. But it's just kind of fun thinking about, like what their world would have been, and how it might have been inadvertently shaped by development and stuff like that, by having these alien caretakers. And then you got to ask yourself, is this the only place in the universe where this happens, or is this just like one battle and every solar system has this evil planet show up? We've got a moon. Is the moon from the last time it happened, so the moon's only 5,000 years old? How does that work? Like,
yeah,
and
what
there's only 2 moons.
Planet that's gone.
So what happened 15,000 years ago? Yeah, not to mention the fact that the evil planet is 62 miles up. I got bad news for you kids. That's close enough to the atmosphere to induce drag, which means it's still going to fucking hit. But, like, let's assume that their fleet of warships can either blow it up now or tow it out into space or whatever. But yeah, like, if you think about it more than 5 minutes, then yes, you will poke holes in it, I guess.
Yes, so. And maybe some of those they didn't have to have it stop 62 miles. It could have been around the distance of the moon, maybe.
Drama.
It's like, it could have been going really, really, really fast, and so it was only 30 seconds away from hitting, but it was still further away than 62 miles.
1 second. It always stops at 1 on the show. Didn't you watch Galaxy Quest?
That reminds me of the bomb where it's like, okay, so one evil guy's bomb gets stopped at 5 seconds. Other evil guy's bombs happens to also be 5 seconds.
But even so, like that is great too. But I also loved his battle cry for the honor, which Zorg was like, honor has killed millions of people and never saved one. So because he's got that whole line, like almost everything in the movie intersects at least one other place, which is part of what I liked about it. There's literally nothing that doesn't come back around at some point that I can think of anyway. And I tried, like I sat through the whole movie. Once I had that thought, like he's got the matches and the fact that there are 3 matches, he lights his cigarette. Once later, when he's arguing with his mom, he burns himself on the second match and shakes it out. So he's got 1 match in his pocket, like Chekhov's gun, until the very end. Until Don't Breathe, like literally everything comes back somewhere. Like that's part of why, like that's greatness. Like what other movies can you say about that?
Really enjoy when Ruby Rod was trying to make fire. I was like, I don't have fire, I smoke, but I have an entourage to hold all my smoking stuff with. He was the best part of the whole movie.
Right.
Quit. He was totally lying, by the way. We just saw him smoke.
Right. Yeah. I've stopped smoking, but if I had known the fate of the whole universe and the planet where it's
and that he didn't know that like they were the whole planet, fate, and a universe and everything is at stake, and he was like, "But why do we have to do this as puzzles?" Like, because if you don't do this in the next 30 seconds, you're gonna die.
Yeah, right. Like he hasn't been paying attention. Yeah, it's like they just spent 2 hours on the ship. What happened during that time?
He's just been a collateral damage celebrity that got caught up in the wake of it all. He didn't actually get explained in any way. It's just like he's talking to the diva, you hold a gun, this isn't me, and then he's dead.
Yeah, but lots of people died, but I didn't think I'd be one of them. I'm too rich and famous to die.
Oh, was it? Oh yeah, when Corbin is like, "Oh, Lilo, I gotta go say Lilo," and he just, an old piano's pretty heavy, but he just goes. But I was like, future piano, it's like there.
It's got rollers, superhuman hero strength, the power of love. I don't know. Yeah.
So did she also have some very quick love romance 5,000 years ago?
Why not?
Maybe.
Are you?
I mean, is that a required part?
I mean, I don't think she has to go back into the pillars that she was in at the start. She was he had already woken her up and put her in a monkey suit when they arrived.
Yeah, I mean, like, there's those questions too, right? The fifth element was very clearly a statue when they came to get it, right? So was she in the statue, which would help ease your whole argument about whether or not she's one of the Mondoshiwans or if she looks like human, right? Because clearly the statue is human-esque and whatever. But yeah, so like I think your question's a little basic, and you're going for sex sells or something like that. But I think the real question is.
Sex sells, and that's why she's wearing paper towels for 30 minutes of the movie.
Yeah. Whatever. So the point about the fifth element, though, and like her falling in love 5,000 years ago, is that the point there is that love triumphs over evil, right? So yeah, she probably did need to fall in love with somebody 5,000 years ago because that's the fifth element. Everybody knows that the fifth element is heart. Everybody knows that the fifth element is heart. Like,
and that's how you summon Captain Planet. I get it, but she said that she didn't feel love before, right? Like this was this thing. Like
because she's a protector.
Because
I don't know. 5,000 years is a long time to be asleep. She probably doesn't remember a lot of things.
Who knows? I mean, again, these are some of those things I feel like more like the pacing where it's too rushed and more time, like 2 movies or at least, would have been given a lot more of this development and made a lot more sense and been a lot more impactful.
That's possible.
We want the Hobbit.
It could be suffering from the fact it was 3 movies shoved into one. Yeah.
We want the fifth element, the sixth element, and the 7th element, for crying out loud.
I think the Hobbit would have been good if they hadn't included all the extra stuff, the Legolas stuff, and it had just been 2 movies. There was room for that in that book. That could have been good.
I think it would have been good if the Battle of the 5 Armies was like the Battle of the 5 Armies instead of why ever Peter Jackson thinks that he can computer generate entire armies and then leave out the elves and their magical fire. See, that's the shit that pisses me off, but not the science jargon. Yeah, for some reason.
Yeah, I don't
But
mix
like,
the science with the
despite
magic unless you're going to do it really right. And I just think they failed. They overmixed their eggs, and it came apart. It separated. Sorry, I was watching baking shows earlier.
Like the British baking show
Yeah, it
or
was.
American? Okay, because the wife watches that all the time too.
Yeah,
So yeah,
it's like I wanted something the fun and happy and filler, and so I started watching that last night. And so it's yeah,
The Fifth Element's a good choice for that, happy and fun and filling. So
yeah,
Yep,
it was.
it is
It is a
happy.
very fun movie. I just think I do feel like it's on the A tier, not the S tier.
okay, so like in its camp, right? Without going out like and trying to compare apples to zucchini with like Chinatown or something like
Sure.
that.
Mhm.
What's an S tier movie in the same ballpark?
Well, you brought up
For
Men
you.
in Black, and it's been a long time since I've seen it, but I feel like it kind of it nailed what it did a little bit better. But I would have to watch it again to actually assess it.
So
So
Men
we're
in Black
talking
does have some like quasi scientific jargon in it as well.
Like I said, it's been a long time since I've seen it.
So when you
But-
say in its camp, do you mean sci-fi with the comedy or sci-fi fantasy, or where are we at here?
Well, I would let you define that, right? I was somewhat broad on purpose, right? Like it probably is more of a it's going to be science fantasy, right? Because it doesn't
Yeah, it's
fall
actually-
into a hard science by any stretch of the imagination, right? So it's a little like it's definitely campier than you would get from a lot of the other main IPs, right? So comparing it to Star Trek or Star Wars is probably a lost cause. Comparing it to Lord of the Rings, it's not remotely on the same planet. I mean, one's on Middle Earth and the other one's on actual Earth. But like stuff like that. But you could compare it to Galaxy Quest, maybe, right? Because they got a campy kind of feel and they're both science fiction and whatever. But Galaxy Quest is like half of a parody as well, right? But
do you know
couldn't
this old movie
compare
called
it.
Brazil?
I've heard of it. I should watch it, but I don't think I've seen it.
Okay, I've seen about
Go ahead,
half
Cody.
of it.
You can roast me now. So
Yeah, I've seen about half of it, so I've got that leg up on you. It was made in like the 60s or 70s,
they
but it's
both
all
have
about
people.
it has this very strange feeling. It kind of reminds me of Dark City, but Dark City doesn't
Okay.
remind me of Fifth Element in any way. But there's this like ridiculousness and the kind of the sense of the bureaucracy, and there's just like air conditioning tubing everywhere that doesn't make any sense, just like the pile of garbage that is there, and set dressing, and the way that his apartment is like a 10 by 12 room, but then the bed rolls
Right.
out and then it goes back
and he
in and
hides
it does
like
this auto
5
wash
people
thing.
in it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The auto wash and all of that.
Right.
It's just I feel like it's in a similar vein, and yet it has a very different tone.
Okay.
But I don't know. If you hadn't seen it, I wondered if I get to be superior, and I do.
Yes. Congratulations. The signature look of superiority. So smug right there.
Did you guys go watch the new Dune movie yet?
Not yet. No.
It's, I mean, that's not a comedy at all, right? But man, is a good. That's a good
Yeah,
sci-fi fantasy.
I'm glad.
movie.
I wanted them. So I finally read it in the last like 2 or 3 years. So I finally wanted them to do a good job with it, and I was really hoping this movie would do well, so that they'd actually get the saga that they deserve, and it would come to the public consciousness. Because apparently we've got an appetite for all these murderous political thrillers like Game of Thrones and whatever, right? So I was like, dude, this is very much a sci-fi Game of Thrones, minus the incest, minus child rape and all of that nonsense, right?
Keep reading.
So yeah, well, yeah. So okay, maybe in another book, but like it was just so interesting. But it's really hard to get into reading it, and I'm sure maybe the movie a little bit, because like shit is so fucking alien, and he gets so deep into the world building, whether or not you understand it. And it's like, well, I mean, you do got to bring the audience along for the ride, So there were times where I was like, shit, which of the 18 bodyguards are we talking to right now, and which one does the thing? So I'm sure in the movie it's going to make more sense and whatnot. And that's another reason why I'm excited about it. But
I have not read the book. I have ordered it because I was actually like, this movie made me a lot more interested in Dune.
Mhm.
I watched the original movie way back in the day, but still quite a bit after it came out. Which, that
like
movie.
with Sean Luke.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's in it. I think he's in it. He's in it, right? Isn't he a bad guy or so? I don't remember what the fuck he plays in it, but I think he's in it.
He was Gurney Halleck, right?
Was he?
Yeah, so he was one of the good guys.
It's been too long.
I think Josh Brolin is playing that character now because.
It's that character. Okay, yeah.
I think so. I think that's what he was. And then Duncan Idaho is played by Khal Drogo. I can't remember. Jason Momoa.
Yeah. So this movie, this Dune movie, is like, I would say the first 30 minutes or something of the original movie. It's this 2-hour movie. There's the pacing's so good. There's so much more room, character development. I really liked it.
Right. They cut the book in half at a point where there is a time skip. I'm pretty sure that's where like this movie will end, and they want to pick up the next movie to carry the rest of that book.
Right.
Yeah, I thought they were planning 3 movies if it went well. If the first one was successful. They're
probably planning, if they want, a lot of people wanted them to get to, I think, is it Children of Dune or is it God Emperor of Dune?
They're not doing. I think they're just doing the first book, and then I don't know if they're going to continue. If I'm going to be honest.
Well, there's a certain point. Well, okay, so after having consumed Dune, and then there's whatever the next book was that I can't remember the name of. That just kind of expanded on the same issues, but then I know it gets much crazier to the point, like, I think people put, like, I think it was book 4 or 5 as, like, that's the peak of the story that you want to get to.
It ends at book 6, though, right? Like, there's 6 books, and then there are some more stuff his son made.
Yeah, and people say to ignore those. Yeah. But out of the original that Frank Herbert wrote, I think it was, like, book 4 or 5. Not the end one, but, like, it gets really bizarre somewhere around there.
But that, to me, like that, I mean, we're gonna have to see if it stands the test of. Since it's not a standalone movie, I kind of need, before I could call it a perfect movie, I need the rest. I need at least the part 2 if that's gonna be.
To your peace talks.
Yeah, right. I'm gonna need the whole enchilada.
Stand on its own, Andreas.
Not necessarily. I don't think so, but that's certainly an opinion.
Sorry, I don't know. Somebody on this podcast possessed me for a second. That was really weird. So.
I do think it mostly stands on its own. The problem just is, the story's not done. The story's not done.
Yeah, I gotta tell you, if you think the story needs to stand on its own, Fellowship is a really shit movie because they fucking they wander off into the wilderness and then it ends. Like, what the fuck is that? So.
Cody Bautista, Cody in chat is saying, I just want to know, is Bautista the Harkonnen that Sting was? Can he compare? I don't remember Sting being that great in that movie, but I haven't seen it for a long time. But Bautista is very good, I feel like.
Bautista's a surprisingly fun actor.
So that for me, for example, the reason I brought it up is that would be like the sci-fi fantasy movie I can think of that I've seen is the most perfect to me so far of the sci-fi fantasy movies I've seen. But it's not comedic at all, right? It's a serious movie.
Yeah, right. I know, that's where I was like, waiting to get there, because I mean there aren't like a ton of like campy sci-fi movies that I can kind of think of that aren't also, maybe rolled into like another IP. Like, you're gonna have jokes, you're gonna have some campiness, you're gonna have, I don't know, really shit dialogue from some of the original Star Trek movies, like the original series stuff. What does God need with a starship? But anyway, so you've got starship. Yeah, right. Yeah, so you got a bunch of stuff, but yeah, like it is hard to compare. But I mean, just and it's kind of interesting because, like, from the trivia, one of the details I picked up was like he wanted a brighter sci-fi. Like, he didn't necessarily want a dystopian sci-fi, even though like the argument could be made that it still is, right? Like, it's got a lot of common themes. It's got a lot of the
dystopian elements, especially when we're in like the way we see Earth in Corbin's apartment, stuff like that's quite dystopic.
Right. So yeah, I thought that was kind of interesting, but yeah, it is, it is almost a genre to itself a little bit. It's clearly what
I just thought of that. First of all, it's a great comedic scene and really establishes Corbin as like how badass he is. So we see all these like these awards, and he goes to open the door, and then this guy's with a gun, and how how cold he is, and just like,
Right.
oh, press the button, and it's like, which I think actually enabled the safety. And then he just
Right.
takes it, and you see all these other guns he's taking from other people, and it's just so good.
It's funny because like that did make it into my notes. I mean, I've only got a few lines here, but like the fact that he outsmarts the mugger, right? Even though he does pull a gun on him at the end, he just talks his way out of it, right? But also the fact that like Corbin in a lot of the like sit down scenes or whatever where there's just dialogue, like when he gets to the priest's office, he's an idiot and a creep, right?
Yes.
Because he kisses a sleeping girl, right? So like let's be clear about that, right? He's an idiot and a creep, and he knows that he's done wrong, right? When she pulls the gun. So like you can make arguments for whether or not he truly is remorseful or he's being coerced because he's got a gun on him. But the rest of the movies, like when he's in the action, he's also exceedingly competent, right? So, you know, like they even bring out his like, you know, his awards and declarations or whatever when they come to give him the job, where it's like you're proficient with all the weapons and vehicles needed for this mission, and it's like 20 pages folded up in his pocket. You know, but I thought that was kind of like an interesting mix for the hero, is like, you know, because he's really not bright, you know, in a lot of ways, but he's just like exceedingly competent and kind of creative when, you know, like the battle kicks off and he's shooting his way through the floor to get Ruby Rod out of the zone of fire and throws a grenade up there and just all of this stuff. It's fun. But yeah, like that scene especially was like, yeah, that doesn't hit right. You know, like, wait a minute. So, but anyway.
Nice hat.
And then he asked the priest, what are these words that she said mean? Never without my permission, as if you couldn't tell that from the fucking gun.
Right. Makes sense, you know. So ecto gamut. So,
but I mean, good movie. Not perfect to me, but very good. I like it. I've seen it before many times. I will see it again.
It's fair. I mean, yeah, I've had it so long. I have a DVD copy of it. So for all you kids at home, DVDs are the things that replace the save icon on your computer when we upgraded our physical storage. So
my brother's 10 years younger than me. And I remember way back, like I was like late teens, early 20s, and we were sitting with my brother and my dad, we were talking, and I brought up VHS, and you know, so he was just like, what's VHS? Because like for him it was DVD. That was the earliest that he could remember. He never had a VHS. I was like, "You kidding me? No, what's a VHS?" Dude, fuck me, dude. 10 years.
When I went to go find the DVD this morning, like we have like this big bin of DVDs, and then we had a tiny box next to it. We have a VHS tape in that tiny box, and I'm like, "What the hell tape is in here?" It's the wife's, because it was something about like TLC, which is a band from like the 90s, in case, you know, you're not that old.
A channel?
No.
I was thinking the channel.
Yeah, no.
What band is
so yeah, so that's kind of funny. And then somewhere I'm sure I still have a shrink wrapped brick of, you know, 144 floppy disks, so that when my kids get old enough to ask questions, I can tell them that it's like, this is how I used to install video games, you know. So X-Wing.
You see that this is what the save icon is based upon.
Right. Yeah. And then they can come back to me, hopefully, and make me proud. And then I know that the world will be in safe hands, and they'll be like, Dad, that belongs in a museum. So thank you.
Oh, is that who TLC is? Cody wrote, "Don't want no scrub," and the song started playing in my head.
Yeah. Don't go chasing waterfalls. Like, really?
Did this song appear in a movie that I've seen? Therefore, I probably don't recognize.
Don't go making phony calls. I mean, their music has definitely appeared in a movie, but it's not like I have every soundtrack memorized. So
it's like, well, I literally like the song, like you starting at the beginning. It was like, I know it because it was in a movie that I watched and I enjoyed. Like that's a lot of how I understood music as growing up.
I mean, apparently they had a movie, their own.
A Spice Girl movie, but for TLC?
A Michael Jackson movie, but
I don't know. I might be confused by this IMDb entry, but let's see. Soundtrack, 56 credits. So it's been in things. I'll see if Veronica Mars, the TV series.
What a show, dude! I love that show. Unironically,
Captain Marvel.
I mean, it is.
Just watched that not too long ago. I don't recall.
Was it noted? I was about to say, was it appropriate for the time? Is it 90? Is it 90s? Or is it 80s?
They
Captain Marvel.
I mean, they were in the mid 90s. Like,
yeah, they were mid 90s, but Captain Marvel was also 90s, right?
Yeah, 96, I think, is when hers takes place. So
yeah, probably very appropriate. Then. I don't remember
Bill
it
Nye
being
the Science Guy, Sabrina the Teenage Witch. So I'm very confused by some of this, but like, yeah, they were also in The Sopranos, which that really seems like a stylistic conflict to me. But yeah,
they appear in everything I have not seen.
See more things, like better things, like
the things we like, director.
Science fiction.
Those are the right things.
Life.
Hey, I like The Mummy.
Yeah.
You also like Chinatown.
Even you enjoyed it a little bit.
Andreas is just out here, gotta, just mowing everybody down this morning. So,
yeah, this morning. Meanwhile, it's 8 o'clock over here.
Hey, no, right. It's morning. You might be able to say it's noon.
Yeah, in about now it is afternoon. So it is 12:01.
Okay. Congratulations! It is now afternoon.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, I went from kind of dusk, a little bit of light, to complete darkness in the hour we talked.
Yeah, well, welcome to the next 6 months of your life, right? It's
Bro, so living here is like
we're last sunset.
I'm past those. We have like 3 months of good sunlight, and then it's just like we got like you get up, it's dark. You go to work, you get out of work, it's dark. Yeah, it's just dark.
Ours can get that bad. Like I've definitely worked shifts where it's like you go to work dark and come out and it's pretty much dark. So yeah.
So what are we watching in 2 weeks?
Okay, I actually came prepared for this. So you ready? Because this is going to make the director excited, which means it's probably going to pass because 2 versus 3. Are you ready?
Oh no!
It was even suggested in the chat earlier.
Constantine.
Yeah, let's do it. It's Spooktober, man. Let's do something somewhat adjacent
not long
to the
ago,
themes.
Just because it's October, it's fitting. We're gonna watch Constantine, and so it's like yes,
right? We're gonna have some kind of like horror-ish themes, you know. So, but
okay, you're right.
Yeah, see, she's so stoked. She's been suggesting it for like 3 months at this point.
Actually, I mean, like, to give credit where it's due, I think it was your wife who initially said that we should put it on the list.
Cool. I married her for a reason, so but yeah, it's funny because I actually did come across that. Like we've got a 3-pack of like Constantine, V for Vendetta, and something else like in the same DVD pack, and I'm like,
dude,
should I suggest V for Vendetta? No, even I don't think it's like perfect. It's just a lot of fun.
I'm pretty sure I suggested that, and I say we watch it in November for obvious reasons.
Well, yes. I think we should. Hold on. Do we record on the 5th of November? Everybody's like,
6th.
Check the calendar.
But
the day after. You can watch it on the 5th.
Yeah.
That's where I watch it. I watch it every year.
All right. Get it scheduled, man. Like I'm agree with that. So
I mean, well, we can watch it for the iconicness of the time frame, but I don't think it's perfect. It's just fun.
But you don't have to think it's perfect. I think it's perfect.
From what I remember, and I'd have to go like check dates and stuff because I'm old, but like it was like one of the first Natalie Portman movies I watched after she was in Star Wars, and I don't think she lived up to the hype in this movie, right? Like she's still very pretty, she's still a pretty good actor, but I just don't think she did an especially good job with the movie. But I think
she's not the only thing that, but like her British accent wasn't the best, but she's not the only thing that was there. That was wrong.
No. But I mean, to start with, and like, I don't know. It's tough because like the villain, well, not the villain. Sorry, the antihero is kind of like over the top, which like befits the character, right? And then you've got like this British dystopia, which is also really in my wheelhouse and stuff. So it's just kind of all over the place where it's like it's got all these themes and ingredients that I like, but I just don't feel like it completely gelled into a really great movie at the end of it. Like there's loads to love from it, but it doesn't quite get to perfect, So
And that's a good way of describing how I feel about the Fifth Element. Like there's lots
Right.
of things that I like about it, but somehow it's just like it fell in not S tier, but A tier maybe. It's just man, it didn't.
I mean, Chinatown was in your S tier, so we know how we feel about that.
But so is The Mummy and Night 2.
Yeah, no. I mean, that's the thing. Like, that's why you haven't really had an argument from me for most of these movies. Like, we've had the odd ducks that you or Ben have picked for sure, but like a lot of the other movies are like, yeah, I would watch this shit anyway. Like, if I didn't have anything better to do,
like Emperor's New Groove is probably just on right now.
Yeah, right. Almost, but yeah, like this morning I threw it on because it's like, well, I could go back to sleep and catch up a little bit, but that's not going to happen. So I put it on. Fifth Element's almost a little too violent for the 5-year-old, but he actually got into it initially, was asking questions about like, what's that thing? What's the planet? What are they shooting at? You know, all of these little, toddler-esque questions and stuff, which was fun. But then he got into his tablet and missed all the violence and stuff. But yeah, so I was like, that's probably pushing it a little far, which is why I don't like watch Aliens on the weekend and whatever else, because it's like I'm way overdue for a rewatch of that, even though I could quote like entire sequences from that movie.
Yeah.
But
at what age are you going
maybe that's what we should do.
Sit him down for Blade.
Yeah. Some motherfuckers are always trying to ice skate uphill.
I watched that again last night.
Oh yeah,
the movie was so weird. But
that one does not age well, and like even looking back, it's like, why do I love this movie so much sometimes?
Yeah.
Not to mention, like, as much fun as
that's why.
Yeah, right. As much fun as Wesley Snipes is as Blade, Whistler is who carries the movie for me. So catch you fuckers at a bad time.
Yeah. So I'm in it for like 10 minutes total.
Yeah. Oh, I know, but you can't get enough of him. And then he finally comes back in 3, and it's like it doesn't give you any of the stuff. Yes, spoilers, but like
I've seen the third.
Back, right?
So the reason that we decided to watch Blade again is because we watched Best in Show the other day, and one of the women in that was particularly weird. And what else was she in? And she was the crazy vampire bitch in the third movie of Blade. So it's like let's watch those again because she was bizarre with the one with Ryan Reynolds. I just don't remember
who is this.
Her name is Parker Posey. She was the one with vampire teeth in her vagina.
Oh, geez. Yeah. Okay.
They really jumped several sharks.
This is. Yeah, no, I mean, because I think 2 is where they get the full like neck bitey thing too, right? Where I was like, why the fuck do we need that? Like, why is that the new thing for vampires? And for a little while, I feel like you got more and more where like vampires were like even more monstrous. I'm like, they're plenty monstrous without like splitting their face and like biting your whole head off or whatever. But
was it then? I thought that was mostly in the third one, but the second movie was weird. It had Ron Perlman in it, and it had a weird philosophical.
The second one is the best one.
And no, I don't feel like it fits with the other two.
I love me some Ron Perlman, right? So like again, like I'm a pick good parts out of that movie without making a gross, comparison. But no, like that's what I saw her in recently. She's Dr. Smith in Lost in Space. Because I was like, I know her from something that is not Blade 3 because I could barely tell you beyond like the Scoobies who is in Blade 3, right? So
Lost in Space, like
they did a TV show. Netflix is doing a TV show. So,
but that's the thing that Gary Oldman was in with like in like the late 90s.
That's the movie in yes.
Yeah, they made a TV show recently. The only other than the Scoobies, the only one I can think of that I can't remember the name of is Prison Break's brother. He is Dracula.
Oh, well, there you go.
I do remember that. The third movie is the one like is going to be weird and funny and exciting because I do remember watching like when it first came out, and like, that was a very strange movie to watch. I was like, however old I was, and then the second movie I watched a couple years ago, it was like, this doesn't fit with the rest of Blade. They were trying to do something very, very high concept.
Yeah, I mean, they definitely pivoted a lot. Like, I like a lot of the actors and whatnot, but I just did not like how they handled like hardly any of the movie, right? So like it's great that she actually learns how to shoot a bow and arrow and she nails the camera, right? That's a fun bit of trivia and whatever. But the fact that she's going slaying or whatever you want to call it with fucking music on was like, no. Like even as a teen, I was like, nope. Just there is no chance where you're hunting creatures of the night, rocking out to like, you know, whatever music, and she's still going to come out on top. It's like she's a goner on the first mission, right? But it's like, but she's Whistler's daughter, so she's got a little bit of Slayer in her or something. I don't know.
Yeah,
but,
surprise child from nowhere.
Right. Yeah. So.
Yeah. All right, we've got plans. We've got the next month figured out on both podcasts because we've got more TV tropes for Dresden.
Who knows? Maybe E.G. will actually watch one of these movies and join us again.
Yeah, that is the next 2 shows for this. Wow. Yeah. I was hoping there was one more in there because I was like, we need another October movie, but Constantine's good.
Constantine is good. What would the next October movie be, though? I like October.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of choices, right? So, you know, Cody was suggesting Scream, for example. Shit, the only thing that comes to mind is Hocus Pocus because I have children, but we already watched that. We got that out of our system. There's a lot of really, really terrible Halloween movies. I mean, just something horror themed, right? Like it doesn't even have to be like Trick or Treat or whatever. Jeepers Creepers could be fun. As terrible as that movie is at times, it's still kind of fun. You know, getting one of those like horror Slayer type movies in, or Aliens, you know, to me would be acceptable because I'm a nerd. Yeah.
Cabin in the Woods is a really good movie and very October. I think.
I knew I liked you. I've always loved you. So
right back at you, dude.
Yeah.
I have not seen any of these movies, so it's
you have Cabin
in the Wood is going on there. It's
just
on
there. I've never seen Scream or Jeepers Creepers or Hocus Pocus either. I've got like maybe 5 minutes of Hocus Pocus, and okay, witches are middle-aged Jewish women. So I get it.
Bother, but no, you can't just say these things on air, man. We're gonna get canceled. But yeah, you got to keep those racist undertones to yourself and put them on Twitter where everybody else does. Okay. No, so I was gonna say something and then you hurt my brain. Oh. Cabin in the Woods, this is not a perfect analogy and some of your guys' heads will explode, but to me, Cabin in the Woods is the horror version of Galaxy Quest, where it's like half a parody and an homage to like all the themes and they just bring everything together. And then it's funny and, you know, pays attention to all the tropes and everything. But it's Joss Whedon and there's unnecessary humor in it, so you probably won't like it.
I'm watching Cabin in the Woods, dudes. Come on.
Oh so yeah, good. I'm gonna have to put it. Oh, Mist, since it's my favorite.
Oh, so good also.
Yeah, I would watch that. So I guess I have my watch list for this month, but we'll see if I actually cut time out for it.
As long as we keep up on Constantine and whatnot.
Fallen would be fun too. So Denzel Washington, John.
I remember that movie. That movie was good.
Because time is on your side.
That movie, I don't know. I watched it at an age that like the
Thing, good one.
I don't know. It's just
is that the one where it's an angel?
I guess I want to say that the twist or like the watching the spooky thing jump between things like that was I was at the age of being fascinated and horrified.
Right. Yeah. Because it's a great moment, and then that's when you know at the end, and you're like, "Oh shit!"
Yeah.
So. Yep.
That was good.
Yep. Well, until next time.